Okay, Parshas Vayetzei. It's Perek Chof Tes, Pasuk Lamed Aleph is where we're going to begin. That's where we left off last year. And the Shvatim begin to be born, and Rachel's response. That's what we're going to see this morning. We're going to go from Chof Tes, Lamed Aleph, page 152 in your art scroll, if you're using the art scroll, all the way to Lamed Pasuk Yud Gimel, which is on page 154. And we're going to see that we're going to have the namings of the Shvatim. Leah gives birth to a number of the Shvatim. She names them. And Rachel's response, because Rachel's barren. Rachel's watching all of this as it occurs, and she's a broken woman. And we're going to see her response. And the birth of Shvatim was a difficult experience for Rachel on many levels. She watches her sister give birth one after another. She watches them named, and it affects her. But there's so much more to the story than just two sisters reacting, one being able to give birth and one not. The Rav focuses on what the text teaches us about love between husband and wife and about having children. And how does that impact the love between a husband and wife? First, certainly from the perspective of the Torah. And we're going to see that the Torah is going to say it enhances the relationship. And that's what the Rav wants to look at through the text. This is the story, in many ways, of Rachel's greatness. Rachel becomes the mother of our nation. Rachel's the Ima of our nation, the aim of Klal Yisrael. And she earns that here in this story. So let's take a look and let's see what we can discern through the Rav's insights on the parsha. Let's begin. Perek Chof Tes, Pasuk Lamed Aleph. Vayar Hashem ki sinua Leah vayivtach es rachma v'Rachel akara. Here you have the strong contrast, right? Vayar Pasuk Lamed Aleph. Hashem saw, Vayar Hashem, that Leah was snua. How would you answer? He translates it here as unloved. Okay, that's better than hated. Yeah. Sounds like hated, right? Okay, so he opened her womb. HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds on Leah's defense, if you will. Okay, Leah's going to have children. But Rachel remained barren. And let's understand this pasuk before we go even further. The Rav doesn't understand it. What do you mean? Vayar Hashem ki snua. Take a look at the pasuk right before it. It says, Vayavo gam el Rachel, vayehav gam et Rachel mileah. This is right after she got, remember, Leah was brought in, right, under Lavan tricks, right? It's all deception. So Leah is brought in as the wife of Yaakov deceptively. And okay, the next morning he realizes it's Leah, blah, blah, blah. And now he insists that he gets married to the woman he loves. So he says, wait a week, and she waits a week, and they get married. So now, Vayavo gam el Rachel, vayehav gam et Rachel mileah. What does that tell you? Vayehav gam et Rachel, that he does hate, he does despise. He loves Leah as well, but he loves Rachel more. There's a comparison, there's a contrast between the two, correct? It's not that one is loved and one isn't loved. And this clearly is stating that both are loved, but in comparison, you can't compare the love he has for Rachel for the love he has for Leah. And the Rav suggests that the Torah is depicting a unique and very special relationship that Yaakov has with Rachel on the one hand. In other words, you have a comparison, you have a contrast. The love of Leah simply doesn't rise to the level of what he has with Rachel. The love of Rachel was so singular, so unique, so profound, that anything in comparison to it is going to fail. And that's a true lesson about life. And the Rav points this out. That's a true lesson about life. You're not only learning about two sisters who are competing, but it's true in life. When you have a contrast or a comparison one to another, and one is so much more appreciated or is unique, then the other is going to fail in comparison. If it would have been left alone, right, on its own merits, it wouldn't suffer, but it suffers because it's in comparison. I'll give you an example in life. If your parent, if your father is a great, great man, and the son might be also very impressive, but everybody compares him to his father, doesn't he fail in comparison?
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Comparison is?
The thief of joy.
That's correct. That is exactly, comparison is the thief of joy is exactly what is being taught here. And the Rav sees this story much more than just two sisters, a lesson about life. I'll give you a number of examples. The Rambam was great, but he had a great son named Avram ben Harambam. And nobody talks about Avram ben Harambam. We have a perush from Avram ben Harambam. It was actually not long ago found in manuscripts in a perush on Torah, and I have a copy. Avram ben Harambam was a major figure in Jewish history, but nobody talks about him because in comparison to his father, who was so great, his father was a unique personality. He, in contrast or in comparison, whichever one you want to use, which word is appropriate, it just doesn't, he doesn't live up to it. I'll give you another example. Here was in reverse. The son was so great, so the father got shafted. And that's Rav Soloveitchik and his father. Rav Moshe Soloveitchik was a phenomenal gadol. He was the one who raised the Rav. They used to say to Rav Moshe, the story goes, they used to say to Rav Moshe, so your son, yeah, he says, yeah, and I always remind him who his teacher was. That was Rav Moshe's response. But Rav Moshe, nobody talks about Rav Moshe Soloveitchik as much. I shouldn't say nobody, but they don't talk about it because you're comparing two people, and one is so superior and unique in comparison and contrast, it suffers. And here we're seeing that in Rachel and Leah. Does Yaakov despise Leah? Not at all. But in comparison to his unique love that he has with Rachel, it just doesn't live up to what it would have on its own, correct? So that's an important lesson, not only in terms of the storyline of the narrative between Rachel and Leah, but something very important that the Rav doesn't want us to forget as we learn these parshios, in particular, the story of Rachel and Leah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she feels that. She feels that in comparison. If it would she would have been just married to Yaakov and nobody else was in comparison. But she's not. She has to compete. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Yeah. Okay, let's continue on. Pasuk Lamed Aleph. So, Chof Tes Lamed Aleph. Chof Tes Lamed Aleph. Am I in the right?
Yeah.
Vayarsham ki yisnu aleya v'yiftakas rachma v'rachel akara v'tahar leya v'tele ben v'tikra shmo Reuven, right? Ki amra ki ra'a Hashem ba'ani ki ato yehavani ishi. So now she begins to give birth, and she calls her first son Reuven. And each son, take a look at this. I want you to pay close attention. Each son, three of them. So she's calling Reuven. Why? Because she hopes that now he will love him. Okay, so son one is an allusion to her hope that she's going to be now really beloved. Vatar vatele ben, and she has the next son, Shimon. Vatamer ki shama Hashem ki sinu anochi, like you mentioned. Vayitin li gam ezeh vatikra shmo Shimon. What is Shimon? Is Shimon also relating to her relationship to Yaakov? Yes. He's being called Shimon because of her relationship. Vatar vatele ben. Pasuk lamed dalet, right? Vatar vatele ben. Vatomer atah hapam yolaveh ishi ki yoladati lo shlosha banim al kain kara shemo Levi. And how she says, atah yehavani, right? What is now? Because now you're going to love me, right? For now, my husband will love me. So the first three sons, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, are being given names associating her desire to be beloved by her husband. That is her hope, correct? And what about Levi? For now, my husband will love me. Leah is uttering a truth about married life and children, the Rav notes. It's something that the world today in many circles denies and doesn't realize. That is, we are hearing about a very low birth rate throughout Europe in particular, and even in circles in America, where couples, what?
Japan.
Oh, yeah. And couples don't appreciate the truism of this pasuk that we're seeing right now. This pasuk is teaching us, Leah is teaching us a lesson, and I quote the Rav, to love means to share an identity and a common destiny. If the lover and the beloved are united, the love for a third will unite them even further. The love between a husband and a wife is strengthened and deepened with the birth of a child. I was Masader Kedusha many years ago for a young couple. They were actually in the late 20s, early 30s. And they told me they're not going to have children. They chose not to have children. And they said to me, the reason is because we want to just focus on each other. And what's the Rav saying? They didn't learn this parsha correctly. This parsha is telling them to love means to share an identity and a common destiny. And if the lover and the beloved are united, the love for a third will unite them even further. And the Rav points out that Rashi explains that the words in the creation story where it said man and women will become basar echad. What does Rashi say on basar echad? That only happens when the child is born. With the child, the love between the husband and wife, man and woman, is transformed into a more spiritual and an exalted love, Rav Soloveitchik notes, because they have created a shared creation, which is ultimate their common goal. They've shared together, they've created together, and that becomes their common goal. The Rav so beautifully captured this idea in his words. I share it with you. Unqualified love of a child unites the parents, brings them closer to each other. Their love becomes more truthful, more intimate, more sincere. Two people, father and mother, are welded together into one. All their concerns and aspirations concentrated on a new center, which becomes the emotional bond linking both of them. Indeed, it becomes the existential focus of their lives, about which everything revolves. When we think that the third is going to take us away from each other, they're so wrong. We join together with a common cause, and that common cause even unites us more. And that's what these psukim of Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are indicating. Why is she naming each one this love? Maybe she should have said, hey, the children are going to separate me from my husband. I should just focus on him. No, the children will bring me even closer, the pasuk is telling us. But then something happens with number 4. Let's take a look in pasuk Lamed Hey. I'm sorry, Lamed Dalet, right? Hapam Yelaveh Ishi Elai Ki Yoladeti Shlosha Banim. And now she turns and she says, hey, I'm going to have my third son, Levi. Something she says, now he'll really love me. Reuven and Shimon are aspirations, but now Levi, she says it as a reality. He's now going to love me. Why is he going to love me? Why did she think, right? Reuven, take a look. Reuven is an aspiration. Shimon is an aspiration. But now, Vatar O Vatele Ben Vatomer Hatam Yelaveh Ishi Elai. Now he is definitely going to become close to me. That's what she says. A Hasidic word was that, well, with the first child, you have 2 hands. So you hold the baby on your own. With the second child, you have 2 boys, right? So he has Reuven, Shimon. So Reuven I have in the right hand. Shimon I have in the left hand. Now I got 2 children. When I have my third child, Yilaveh Ishi, he has to come and help me because I don't have any more hands, right? That's the Hasidic word. of this. But the Rav is looking at it. The first two, Reuven and Shimon, were names that were in aspiration, right? She said, oh, they allude to my desire to have a relationship with him that is going to be enhanced. Levi, she says, Ata, now, right? Look at the words in this pasuk. He says, Vatar odatele ben vatomer ata hapam yilave ishi. Ata, as if it's going to happen now. What was it? So the Rav underscored the desire of Leah to be loved was not motivated, first and foremost, we should know, by a selfishness or an egotistical desire. It's not. It's the basic right of a woman to be loved by her husband. And anything is worth fighting for. And she's willing to fight for it, if you will. Leah possessed, in the Rav's words, a personal dignity, a majesty. And that's why she would do anything to get the love from Yaakov. When Levi was born, she felt certain. And this pasuk is it's a certainty. She's expressing a certainty that now Yaakov would become really close to her. Why? Because number 3 in halacha is chazaka. It means reality. It now becomes something of a reality. It becomes the autopilot of our lives. That's what chazaka means. Chazaka means, in halakhic terminology, it would mean when you say something has been done 3 times, now it's chazaka. What does that mean? Autopilot. It's become the way we act, right? She names her 3rd son, reflecting chazaka, the very idea of chazaka. The fact that now she has 3 children, her 3rd son, to be the impetus and the cause that Yaakov become more attached to her because of chazaka. What chazaka? That she's proven that she's fruitful. She's the one who's producing the children. And number 3 establishes the image that she's the wife who's giving birth to the children.
Is she seeing any change in her relationship with Yaakov?
None whatsoever. Take a look at number 4. But we're going to get there. Number 1 and 2, what I'm trying to demonstrate is number 1 and 2 are Reuven and Shimon, aspirational. Levi, she's certain. Where did she get the certainty from? Because she is the chazaka. She has proven, I'm the one who can be the one who gives you children. And the lesson is that children don't diminish our relationship with our spouse. They enhance it, correct? That's what the Torah is telling us. And now something happens in verse number pasuk lamed hey, in child number 4. Vatar od vateleb. And she has number 4. Vatomer hapam odeh es Hashem. Now I am going to sing thanksgiving to Hashem. Alkein kara shema Yehuda. And she names him Yehuda. Vatamod miledes, and she stops giving birth at that moment. Okay. Hapam odeh es Hashem. This 4th child is different than the first 3, right? It's now that she's suddenly thanking Hashem for a child. And your question is, what took her so long? Excuse me, she should have been Thanksgiving. There should have been a Thanksgiving for number 1. Well, number 1, why did she have to wait for number 4? Shouldn't she have already expressed gratitude as soon as she started giving birth? So Rav Soloveitchik notes, gratitude, you have to understand what gratitude is. This is a typical rabbinic mind. How do you tackle this kind of a problem? So what do? I mean, by the way, just methodologically, you have a problem. The question is profound. Why would she wait until number 4? She should have said, thank you, number 1. Whenever I do anything for you, you should say, thank you, number 1, right? You're going to wait until number 4. She only thanks HaKadosh Baruch Hu, number 4. So methodologically, how would you answer it? So we have to immediately say, we have to understand the word Thanksgiving. What does Thanksgiving mean? Then we'll be able to answer the question. And this is a typical Talmudic approach. And the Rav gives that approach. He says, okay, let's understand Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, gratitude, functions in 2 ways. It has 2 functions, if you will. Number 1, it expresses thanksgiving. We express thanksgiving for that which has been attained. That's true. That's the function of gratitude. We express thanksgiving for that which has been attained. But there's a second function of thanksgiving, of gratitude, and that is it makes us appreciate that the impossible is not necessarily going to happen, but yet we still have to be grateful. You got it? Again, first, it expresses thanksgiving for that which has been attained, and B, it makes us appreciate that it is impossible to acquire everything we want. Let me put it that way. It's impossible to acquire everything we want, right? We say thank you for whatever we attained, and at the same time, we realize we're not going to get the whole package. That's life. You don't get the whole package. It just doesn't happen. Oh, so if I don't get the whole package, I shouldn't say thank you. That's what Leah is teaching us. Thank you functions two ways. You thank you for that which is attained, and you realize that you're not going to get the whole package. It's just not going to happen. Knowing this, the Rav notes that there are two needs that Leah had, and Leah is reflecting upon them here through Yehuda. Her first need was she wants to be loved by her husband. And what's her second need? To have children that she will be able to bestow the love upon. Right? A wife wants to be loved, and she wants to give love. And that is why she now expresses the gratitude, because she comes to the realization that at least part of her desire comes through, isn't it? Isn't it true? There are two needs. There are a need of my love of my husband and my children onto whom to bestow. After giving birth to 3 sons, Leah comes to terms with realizing she's not getting the whole package. Remember, A, B, and C, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven and Shimon were aspiration. Levi, she thought, oh, definitely. But that's also, we can now look back after Levi's born and say it's also aspiration. But after the 3 sons, she comes to term with that at least she's going to get half of the package, right? She's not going to get the full package. They are not going to create suddenly that she's going to be beloved as much as Rachel. She comes to terms now that Rachel always will be the one woman of Yaakov's true and deep love. And that's not going to change no matter what. She comes to terms with that. With Yehuda's birth, she ends pursuing change in a relationship with Yaakov and realizes she's blessed. She is blessed. How is she blessed? She's blessed to have 4 children that she can bestow her love upon them. And that is half of the package for her. Yes, she wanted more than that, but she got at least the package that she does. The Rabbi then quotes the Gemara in Brachos, Zion Amid Beis, that supports this observation. The Gemara says that up until Leah, nobody expressed thanksgiving to Hashem. It's wild. It's a wild Gemara. Nobody ever thanked Hashem until Leah came along, the Gemara says. And she's the first one to teach us thanksgiving. Well, what does that mean? That means she taught us what thanksgiving really means. When you don't get everything you want, do you still say thank you? And that's what Leah taught us. Leah taught us that thanksgiving you don't get the whole package. You get part of the package and you say Todah la Hashem. In light of this, we can understand now why Yehuda becomes whose name? Our name. We're Yehudim. Yehudim. Why is it associated with the Jewish people? No nation, the Rav notes, has suffered persecution and denigration like the Jewish people. And despite it all, we're thankful to Hashem that we're the selected people. This is reflected in the name Yehuda. It's reflected, I would go one step further. This should resonate with all of us during this time that we're going through as a Jewish nation in Eretz Yisrael. Do we still not live a life of thanksgiving? Yes, we do. It's a very, very important perspective. The unbelievable things have happened since October 7th. Unbelievable Nisim B'niflos. Did we get the whole package? No, we didn't get the whole package. Should we say Hodeh la Hashem? Hapam Hodeh la Hashem? 100%. Leah taught us how to thank Hashem and realize that we're not necessarily get the whole package, but yet we're going to be able to be the resilient people that we are. It's a very important lesson that Chazal see through Leah, and that the Rav again sees how she's naming her children, reflecting these realities and these lessons. And it doesn't only apply to her, right? And it doesn't only apply to Rachel, who's she's being compared to and contrasted to. Okay, let's continue on. Now go to Perik Lamed Pasuk Aleph. Okay, Vatalmad Meledes, it said she stopped giving birth. Okay, unbelievable pasuk. It's most probably the most emotionally charged psukim in Tanakh. What happens now in this pasuk? Vatera Rachel kilo yolda Yaakov. She sees, Rachel sees, I'm not giving birth. I'm not giving any children to Yaakov. My sister Leah, who I, by the way, helped get her married to him, which we'll talk about in a few seconds. She's the one giving birth not to one, not to two, not to three, 4 children. And she's watching this, and she's watching it all, and she's seeing it. Vatera Rachel kilo yolda Yaakov. Next words. Vatikane Rachel ba'achosa. And what does the Torah tell us? Remember, who's the narrator? Who's the narrator? Hashem is the narrator, so it's the ultimate narrator. So is this subjective or objective truth? Objective. And though when usually emotions are what? Subjective, correct? There's no subjectivity here because it is the divine narrator speaking. This is why Rabbi Cooperman, Zichrono Livracha from Michlala, used to always read the Torah, in particular Chumash Bereshis. You have to know who's the narrator. He'd always say that. Who is the narrator? Is it objective or subjective truth? This is objective truth. The narrator is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When the human being is the narrator, and many times it is he or she in the Torah story, correct? That is subjective or objective? Subjective. It's subjective truth. But here it's not subjective, it's objective. That is objective truth. Vatomer El Yaakov. And now she turns, like I say, it's one of the most emotionally charged psukim in Tanakh. Vatomer El Yaakov, we've been told she's jealous. So she bursts forth. Vatomer El Yaakov, Havali Banim. Give me children. And if you don't give me children, I'm going to be dead. It's not worth my life. I might as well die. Correct? It's unbelievable. What in the world is going on? Up until now, Rachel was like her name. What is Rachel? A sheep. A sheep is a very quiet animal. A sheep doesn't make a lot of noise. A sheep doesn't make a lot of noise. So Rachel, she's the Rachel. She is silent, the Rav says. She was the one who gave to her sister the Simonim, right? And so that Leah should not be discovered that night, embarrassed, but even one more element to the story the Rav points out. Rachel must have realized that Leah would not have gotten married at all. She was the Torah told us she wasn't as beautiful as Rachel. The Rav says she wasn't good looking at all. She must have been. That must have been here because the Torah is telling us that. But when you look at the psukim, there's something deficient in her looks that must have been we would say in modern English, we'd say it was a turnoff, right? On a physical level. I don't know. It seems the pasuk, but that's important only for one reason. That's important because it tells you how kind Rachel was. Rachel realized that if she did not get married, the Rav notes, to Yaakov, she wouldn't have gotten married. Her destiny was in the hands of Rachel. And Rachel does what? Rachel gives up everything that she had, and she allows her to marry her love. Rachel gave up everything with a capital E. She gave up her life, her love, and even her right to be buried with the man that she so admired adored, and loved. She's not going to get buried with him. She died young. She didn't see her second son grow up at all. She called him Ben Oni, the son of the grief, the son of despair. And yet, she was always like her namesake, Rachel, a sheep, quiet and mute. They don't make noise, and she didn't express a complaint except once. When? When? In this pasuk. Here it is. Here she expresses her grief. She expresses her complaint. What happened here was so out of character of Rachel. We feel the pathos of a woman who was so desperate to have children, she literally explodes. Literally explodes. It is the only time in her life that she does this. We have no other documentation of Rachel losing it, but Rachel lost it here. She reached a psychological impasse in her life, which was a point of exhaustion for her. She felt total loneliness. She explodes with an incoherent, well, that's what happens, right? Psychologically, it becomes incoherent and nonsensical. She makes a nonsensical comment. Could she honestly demand of Yaakov to give her a child? It makes no sense. Was God Yaakov? Was Yaakov God? They're not the same. And that's how he responds. Would you want Hatachas, right? What does he say? Hatachas Elokim Anochi. Are you putting me in place of God? God gives you children, not I. I'm not the one who gives you children. She said something nonsensical. Could she honestly demand of Yaakov to give her children? He responded in that way. But what is so important to appreciate in this story is that the Torah is sharing with us this most reasonable and self-sacrificing woman was still totally human. This is such an important lesson in this story. Our characters, our biblical, you know who points this out at length, is Hirsch. And this becomes an argument even in the Frum community, and more modern commentators have discussed this, do you look at the avos and the imahos, the biblical figures, with a critical eye? Do we have a right to look and read their stories with a critical, honest eye or not? And the Rav is suggesting the Torah is giving you an insight that Rachel, no matter how selfless she was, and she was beyond selfless, no matter how level of tzaddikus she was, and she was beyond all of that, she was still, at the end of the day, a human wired like us. She was wired like us. I'll tell you the difference is, she just blows up once in her life. Right? That's the greatness of Rachel. But she blows up. And don't think that she can't blow up. Like the Rav says, it was a psychological impasse. She couldn't take it anymore. And so what does she do? But when you blow up, you say nonsensical things. And you do. And the Torah is sharing that. Even the Rachel, who was unbelievable in her kindness, can't take it anymore. She can't. She becomes jealous. The Torah tells us about that, right? She's jealous of her sister. And the Rav explains that it's crucial for us to appreciate that Rachel wanted more than just a physical child and to have a physical child and be a physical mother. That's more than just what's going on here. If you just read that, you're misreading the story. It is true, a mother wants a child to shower love upon. That is true. But the Jewish mother, the Rav notes, and Rachel becomes the paradigm of the Jewish mother, the mother of the covenantal community. That's the Rav's words. There's another dimension as well to her love. The mother in the covenantal community, the Jewish mother, transcends egotistical levels and beyond the physical mother alone that wants to shower upon a child physical love, and she becomes the spiritual mother, the mother who fashions her child by teaching, educating, training, and consecrating her child to become an Eved Hashem. That's what the Jewish mother wants. The regular mother, yes, the physical, yeah, she's that too, but she takes it to another level. I quote the Rav, the covenantal mother's desire and craving for her child glow from the deep recesses of her personality where God's image is engraved. Bottom line, she tries to imitate the Creator. The Jewish mother tries to imitate the Creator. The Rav always noted, what is the greatest act of creativity that man can be involved in? It's giving birth to a child. It's taking this child who has no personality, no spiritual personality, certainly, right? I'm watching, Baruch Hashem, Dina had a baby, so we get pictures now, and Ruchama just returned from being with the baby you watch this little thing. It has nothing, and this little child, Bezrat Hashem, will become a Bas Torah. It's unbelievable. Because I'll give you another example. My grandchildren go, my Dina's children go to YNJ. This just happened this morning. That's why it's on my mind. Baruch Hashem with Gila's children, the same thing. You see constantly. But Dina wrote us that our YNJ is the Yeshiva Katana that they go to, Yeshiva in North Jersey. It's a wonderful school, and they're very happy there. And on Friday, the school announced that there is Achnasa Sefer Torah going to take place in the school. Somebody has donated, a major patron of the school has donated, I think, in memory of a grandmother, of a mother, a wife who passed away. So they're donating a Sefer Torah, and they're doing Achnasa Sefer Torah in the school. So my daughter writes a text to us this morning, and she sends this, the announcement from the school, and she says, I'm so happy because Moshe and Shaya will witness this simple. That's exactly a Jewish mother. A Jewish mother. Why am I telling you this story? It's exactly a Jewish mother. The Jewish mother wants to bestow upon, yes, the wealth, but she has another level. She wants them to become Avdei Hashem. And that's exactly the point. That's taking this child, this little nothing, and developing and as crafting, if you will, and fashioning and creating a personality that's an Eved Hashem. And that's what Rachel really wants. Knowing that, now we can understand Rav Soloveitchik takes it to the next level. An unbelievable medrash. You all know this medrash, but it's worth noting, and it's from here the story emanates. It's the medrash found in the Psicha to Eicha Rabbah. The medrash tells us that following the destruction of Bayis Rishon, right, of the first temple, the Navi is whom? Yirmiyahu. The Navi of Bayis Rishon, Churban Bayis Rishon is Yirmiyahu. So Churban Bayis Rishon, right, he's telling that the Navi, according to the Medrash, sees Churban coming. And the Navi goes to the Avos and the Imahos, and he goes to Moshe Rabbeinu. He wakes them up. That's what the Medrash says. He arouses the Avos and the Imahos and Moshe. He says, come to the Kisei HaKavod. Plead for Klal Yisrael. Plead that they will return from exile. How do we know? The Churban's happening. And people, we're going to be exiled. Come now, the Yirmiyahu, according to the Medrash, comes to the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Moshe Rabbeinu, come to the Kisei HaKavod and plead on behalf of Klal Yisrael that we will return to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel. We're going into Bavel, right? The Medrash continues to relate the story as it unfolds. It's an unbelievable Medrash. Avram comes. He's the first. Avram's the first. So Avram says, Hashem, you got to do it. You got to do it for me. Why? Because I did the Akedah. I did the Akedah with Yitzchak. Yaakov comes and he shares with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Medrash says, all of the suffering he went through, all the suffering that we've been reading, right? Yaakov suffers to his last day. Almost, well, the last 18 days, 18 years are benefited, but still he's in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, so Yaakov suffers. Moshe, the Medrash lists, Moshe comes. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest Jew ever to live, the greatest human being. He says, I was willing to do superhuman sacrifices. During the long period of 40 years, I was devoted to the people. I had a commitment to Klal Yisrael. I committed to you, Hashem. He gives the whole thing. Hashem rejects all of their prayers. He says, no, sorry, you haven't moved me one iota. The Midas Hadin prevails, and they're going to Bavel, and up until that moment, they're not coming back. That's what the Medrash says. That's what it says. In spite of Avram's pleas, in spite of Yaakov's pleas, in spite of Moshe's pleas, suddenly the Medrash says, a little woman comes over, and she does one thing. Rachel mevaka al bonea. Rachel begins to cry. What did she do? Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Medrash says, as the Rav beautifully describes this Medrash. The Rav's description of the Medrash. Moshe had a long story he told HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He told HaKadosh Baruch Hu about redeeming the people from Mitzrayim, leading the people through the Midbar, and all that had happened there, being accused so many times by Klal Yisrael as a traitor. We turned to Moshe and we dumped on him. We trashed him. We threw him under the bus. So many sleepless nights Moshe had by the Egel Hazov, climbing Har Sinai not once but twice, waiting for Hashem for 40 days to say you can come back. Didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu deserve to listen to him? Didn't Moshe deserve that HaKadosh Baruch Hu listened to him? HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to Moshe, right? Then there was the story of the Meraglim he told, the story of Korach, Zimri, Sichon. Oh, Moshe, the story was enormous. He brought the nation out of slavery. He gave everything of himself. Every minute of his life, of his time, was given to Klal Yisrael. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu rejects it. Rachel, however, let's study about Rachel, the Rav says. It doesn't make sense, the story. Rachel died in labor in her second child. She didn't raise her second child. Jewish history was not promoted by Rachel. It was promoted by Moshe. It did not progress by Rachel's life. It ended with Rachel's life. She didn't do it beyond that. And she's the one that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chooses to listen to. Obviously, as the Rav says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a different yardstick. What's that different criteria? Rachel, what kind of story did she tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu? I'll tell you, the Rav says, it was a very simple story. It was a story of a young girl who loved a handsome boy. With all of her passion, she loved that boy, but nevertheless gave him to her older sister, who had no hope of finding another like him. That was it, right? And behold, while HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not hearken and to the arguments and petitions of the Avos and Moshe Rabbeinu, while HaKadosh Baruch Hu ignored Avram's Akedah, Moshe's heroic sacrifice for Klal Yisrael, what did he do now? He accepted Rachel's cry, Rachel's tear. He accepted Rachel's story as the most sublime sacrifice addressed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, exclusively to him. This is the story of Rachel. This is the story of these psukim. Rachel is the most powerful story in all Tanakh, wrapped up in all of these psukim that we're reading. Rachel is the one who's willing to give the most human dimension away. Moshe acted superhuman. Rachel acted human. Her acts were human. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't demand of us to be superhuman. Let me wrap it up by telling you, when I meet with Chassan and Kala and I prepare them for Hasana, of course, we go over all of the halachos. And first and foremost, I have to find out if they're kosher to get married to each other. That's the first question, okay? Fine. And after all, I do numerous meetings with Chassan and Kala, not just one meeting. And we go over all of the minhagim. The most important session I have with Chassan and Kala is a session called How Do You Make a Marriage Work? How do you make a marriage work? And it's all about the human dynamic. It's all about the human dynamic. And that's what's so important. This story here in Chumash is all about the human dynamic. And that's how the Rav understands these psukim. It's a contrast. Yes, there's love. There's kina also. There's human emotions in this story. And we have to understand Why is Rachel Mevaka al Baneha the one that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lives by and accepts? Because, so I was going to tell you, so this would, when I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. So this point, I tell Chosin and Kala, I say, is there room in marriage for arguments? 100%. Don't melt because you had an argument with your spouse. The first time you have a bad argument. No, it's nothing wrong. You can have arguments. I say, you're not Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. We're not Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Who's Shlomo Zalman Auerbach? He was married to his wife, his Rebbitzin, for 50 years. At her Levaya in front of 100,000 people, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said, in front of them, I'm not asking Mechila. There's nothing you ask a Minig Yisrael at the Levaya of a loved one, you ask Mechila. We definitely crossed you. We didn't do what you need. We weren't sensitive to you, etc. We beg Mechila. He says, I'm not asking Mechila. There was never a moment in our relationship where we mistreated each other. We followed Shulchan Aruch Kedas V'Kedin. So you know what I tell Chosin and Kala? You're not Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Don't dream about that. That is not who you are. That's not who you are. And guess what? This story, according to the Rav, is telling us, Rachel is teaching us, she's great. She's the greatest tzaddikus, but she's also human. And she acts human. And she has kina. And Leah is a tzaddikus too. And Yaakov and Yitzchak and Avraham all are tzaddikim, but they're human. They're not gods. They're not divine. They make mistakes, and we learn from their mistakes. We relate to their mistakes because they become even greater when they become models that we can emulate. If we can't emulate them, then what is it all worth? And that's what the Rav is pointing out. This magnificent rendition of this medrash through the eyes of how the Rav teaches it from these psukim. This medrash comes from these psukim, right? It's Rachel Mevaka al Banel, because she is as human as they get, and she transcends her humanity, right? She transcends it. That's the greatness of Rachel. She only blows up once. I think that's what's that's the most important part. She blows up, of course, she explodes because there's an emotional, psychological impasse in her life. She wants her love to love her and to give her children. She wants that. By the way, Rachel and Leah both get half a story, don't they? Rachel gets the love of her husband, but she wasn't getting the children. Leah gets the love of the children, but she doesn't get the love of the husband that she wants so badly. Each one is getting half a picture, right? And that's what the Thanksgiving is all about as well. So the bottom line, these psukim that the Rav understands is it's much more than just a story of two women fighting over one man. That's part of it. There's no doubt about that, but it's so much more. And the lessons are crucial to us that I think when you wrap it all up, and a lesson that I'm telling you, society, not our community per se, Baruch Hashem, our community understands the beauty of children. And we feel that it's a tremendous bracha. That's another thing I tell Hassan and Kala when I'm going over all of how to make a marriage succeed. We discuss the fact that children are a bracha. Children are enormous bracha. And I can tell them because Gila has taught me this through her experience and her own experience, and now at Yesh Tikva, that 1 out of 8 couples are going to have problems having a child. That's a lot. That's a lot. People don't realize it. That's a lot, right? But Baruch Hashem today.
Unfortunately, the numbers have changed to 1 in 6.
1 in 6, okay? That's the mother talking, right? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, okay, there you go. I'm not up to the latest, so Rachame is. Yeah, that's a lot. And so I tell them, if you, God forbid, have any issue, this is one of the things I say, today there is help. And don't be embarrassed by trying to get that help. It's not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. With HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the medical miracles that we live, I always say, I feel so blessed talking about Odeh LaHashem that I live in this generation. I live in this generation of unbelievable medical miracles, unbelievable, right? Yeah, prosperity, 100%. And I live in the generation of Medinat Israel. It's unbelievable. With all that it means, it's unbelievable. Our parents and your grandparents didn't even have the dreams. They couldn't even fathom what we live today. They can't. It's unbelievable. Anyhow, that's the bracha. The bracha is children. And the Rav is saying that this story here in Parshas Vayetzei is also that lesson. Realize that your love of your husband, your love of your wife doesn't get diminished by having children. That's also a lesson being taught from these psukim. Okay, yes.
I just want to say one thing.
1 second, Ruchama, 1 second. Yeah, Khan. Right.
So.
Ruchama Vaka Abana, yeah.
She barely could have children.
Right.
It's such a hard
Right.
time. And still she is worried or probably is in pain about the future generation.
Right.
Or other
That's Rachel. That's Rachel. That's Rachel. That's her greatness. She becomes the aim of Klal Yisrael, right? What did they say in Yiddish? Mama Rachel. Yeah, she becomes aim Shel Yisrael is Rachel. Rachel mivaka bonef. And that's why, by the way, that's the Haftorah on which day? On Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, it's the most, in my humble opinion, I say this every year, I love that Haftorah. That Haftorah is just the most magnificent. B'shavu vanim legvulam, Rachel, mini kolech mi bechi, stop crying. You're going to see that they're going to return. We've seen it. Yes, Ruchama, what did you want to say? Ru? Do you hear me? No? Okay.
Could you hear me?
Now, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hebrew and it has words that the English language doesn't have. I'm sure it's in reverse as well, but let's say you have machatanim, but also because you had the condition of 2 women for 1 husband, so they also get a name. Like it could be that in the Torah it says now that she was the snua, but they're called sarot. In Navi,
Right.
we're told that, right?
Right.
That they're
Right.
called sarot, and it's a very difficult situation.
Right.
And so that she promoted this situation, Rachel, is amazing, but that she would end up having jealousy is not amazing. Of course, that is a very
It's
difficult.
human. It's human. It's
Right.
totally human. That's what the Rav is pointing out. Don't miss that pasuk, he says. Don't all of the story, don't miss that pasuk. She's human. She explodes. She does. And we expect it. And that's also okay. That's, this argument, I'm not giving it justice, but this is a big argument. Hirsch is the biggest promoter. You should read this. Hirsch and his treatment of the avos and imos sees them as totally models that we can relate to. And he points out when they do things wrong, we got to learn from those experiences. He says that the way Yaakov treats the boys and versus Yosef causes trouble. He's very critical. Why doesn't Yitzchak and Rivka talk to each other? It causes a problem. Communication is the first lesson, by the way. When I deal with Chosn and Kala, I say, lesson number 1, communication. Communication. If you don't have communication, you don't have anything. Okay, we'll continue next week in the next part. Yes, Rita.
Deal with the idea that all the imahot, that most imahot were barren.
Yes. Yeah, Chazal deal with that. So the Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted their tefillos? That's difficult to understand. What do you mean HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs their tefillos? The tefillos change them. The tefillos change them. It transforms the entire experience from just a physical giving birth, right? It goes back to what the Rav was pointing out. The Rav was saying that the Jewish mother, it doesn't only want to be a physical mother bestowing her love upon a child, but she has a greater need, right? The greater need is to develop in Evet Hashem, all wrapped into the one picture.
Talk about is there a connection between the fact that Yaakov clearly loved Rachel more and to Rachel's being barren? Because in the pasuk, it almost seems like, there's a relationship. No,
I haven't seen anything that he says. I don't know. I don't know. I've leery to say there aren't, because I don't know. So the three most important words in last week's parsha were Rashi, aim, Rivka, aim, Esav, Yaakov, right? In the last week's parsha, at the end of the parsha, it says in pasuk right there in Shavi on page 142. If you have the pasuk, it's a phenomenal Rashi. Everybody know, and Rashi does this a few times, but this is the famous one. It says, "Vayishlach Yitzchak es Yaakov vayelech Padeno Aram." He sends Yitzchak. Yitzchak sends Yaakov to Padeno Aram because his brother wants to kill him, but that's not what it says here. El Lavan ben Tzuel Arami. He sends him to Lavan ben Besul Arami. Achi Rivka to her brother. Aim Yaakov ve'Esav. Rivka is the mother of Yaakov and Esav. Take a look at Rashi, the famous Rashi on Aim Yaakov ve'Esav. Eini Yodea ma melamdenu. I don't know what it teaches me. The Chama Leibovitz says the four most important words ever written by a Rishon. Ein Yodea ma melamdenu. If you don't, I don't know, is teaching us. And as Nechama Leibovitz says, that is the promotion of, okay, get to work. I might not know it. Now you gotta learn it. You gotta figure it out. Rashi's promoting us and saying to us, Eini Yodea, I might not know, but I expect you to figure it out. That's what Nechama Leibovitz says. It's a beautiful thing. And by the way, he says it.
I remember saying
Rashi says it a number of times. It's not just here. This is the most famous. He says, Eini Yodea ma melamdenu. He says it a few times in his parish. Those are the most important words that you can say. I don't know.
very humble.
But he says Rashi is the ultimate teacher. So if he's saying Eini Yodea ma melamdenu, what does that do? That gives us the obligation to go out and figure it out, right? And we've been doing that ever since. Okay, we'll pick up next week. Yachikoa, my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Okay. Now, let's cancel this.